The roar of engines drowned out the world on Interstate 95, a ribbon of asphalt cutting through the haze of a late summer afternoon. Horns blared like angry beasts as traffic jammed into a snarl, drivers slamming brakes and cursing under their breath. In the median strip, amid swirling exhaust and discarded cans, a tiny shadow darted, a scruffy puppy, no bigger than a loaf of bread, its fur matted with dust and fear. It froze, wide eyes reflecting the chrome grills barreling toward it, paws slipping on the gravel as semis thundered past, inches from crushing oblivion. The little dog whimpered, a sound lost in the chaos, its body trembling as if the ground itself might swallow it whole. From the shoulder, a lone figure cut through the frenzy like a blade. Vince Boulder Knox, broad-shouldered and leather-clad, astride his weathered Harley-Davidson, had been cruising northbound when the sight hit him like a gut punch. His crew called him Boulder for the way he stood unyielding against storms, physical or otherwise, but today something cracked in that granite facade. He killed the engine with a flick of his wrist, the sudden silence amplifying the puppy's faint cries. Without a word, Vince swung his leg over the bike, his boots hitting the pavement with a thud that echoed his resolve. He raised a gloved hand, palm out, stepping into the lane as if commanding the tide. Cars screeched to a halt, tires smoking, drivers leaning on horns in protest. "What the hell?" one yelled from a pickup. But Vince didn't flinch. His voice boomed, gravelly from years of wind-whipped roads and unspoken regrets. "Back it up, now!" It wasn't a request. It was the bark of a man who'd faced down bar fights and worse. The puppy cowered as he approached, its ribs visible under patchy brown fur, a collar of frayed rope suggesting it hadn't wandered far from cruelty. Vince knelt slowly, the heat from the asphalt rising like steam, and extended a hand scarred from old burns and barroom brawls. "Easy, little guy. Ain't nobody hurting you on my watch." The dog hesitated, then bolted forward, nuzzling into his palm with a desperation that twisted something deep in Vince's chest. He scooped it up gently, feeling the rapid heartbeat against his jacket. The warmth of trust blooming in that fragile moment. Traffic ground to a standstill, a sea of stalled vehicles stretching for miles, onlookers pulling out phones to capture the spectacle. The towering biker cradling the lost pup like it was the only thing that mattered. Vince ignored the flashes, his focus narrowing to the wide, trusting eyes staring back at him. "You're coming with me, kid," he muttered, tucking the puppy inside his vest. As he strode back to his bike, the crowd parted, murmurs rippling through the air, some in awe, others in disbelief. By the time Vince fired up his Harley and eased through the gap he'd created, the incident had already sparked a wildfire online. Videos flooded social feeds, badass biker halts highway for puppy rescue. Comments poured in, praise for his grit, speculation about the man behind the myth. But Vince Knox wasn't one for spotlights. He rode on, the puppy, now dubbed Bolt for the lightning scar on its ear, curled against his side, oblivious to the storm it had ignited. The road ahead blurred into golden fields under a fading sun, the scent of wild grass mingling with the tang of motor oil on his skin. Vince had been running from shadows for years, ever since the war that carved him hollow. Back in '08, he'd promised his squad brother Tommy to look out for the ones left behind. Widows, kids, the broken pieces of lives shattered by IEDs and endless patrols. Tommy didn't make it home. His Humvee flipped in a dust-choked ambush, leaving Vince with a purple heart and a vow etched in blood. He'd traded desert sands for blacktop, joining the Iron Vipers, a motorcycle club that became his anchor in the chaos. They weren't outlaws, not really, just men bound by codes older than the highways they claimed. Loyalty, honor, the kind of promises that didn't fade with time. But solitude had its claws in him deep. Vince's rides were solo affairs, chasing horizons to outrun the ghosts. His face, weathered by sun and sorrow, bore the lines of a man who'd seen too much, a jagged scar across his jaw from a stateside brawl that ended a toxic chapter with his blood family. They called him Boulder because he didn't break, but inside, fissures ran deep. Saving Bolt felt like a spark in the dark, a reminder that some fights were worth the standstill. As dusk painted the sky in bruised purples, Vince pulled into a roadside diner off exit 47, the neon sign flickering rusty spur like a beacon for wanderers. He ordered a burger and black coffee, Bolt lapping water from a bowl the waitress provided with a knowing smile. "That little one's lucky," she said, eyeing the puppy's eager tail wags. Vince grunted, but his hand absently stroked Bolt's head, the gesture soft against his calloused fingers. News played on the diner's TV, a clip of the rescue looping, his bike gleaming under the sun, the puppy's rescue a viral heartbeat. Strangers at the counter nodded his way, but Vince kept his gaze low, the weight of unwanted eyes pressing like storm clouds. That night, under a canopy of stars, Vince camped by a forgotten creek, his bike propped like a sentinel. Bolt slept at his feet, a warm bundle chasing dreams unmarred by the world's cruelties. Vince stared into the fire's glow, embers crackling like whispers from the past. He'd stopped traffic for a stray, but in doing so he'd halted his own drift. Word from the Viper's network buzzed on his phone. The clip had reached club brothers from coast to coast, stirring old loyalties. What started as a whim was unraveling into something bigger, a thread pulling him toward truths he'd buried. Dawn broke with a chorus of birds, the air crisp with dew-kissed earth. Vince packed up, Bolt now sporting a makeshift leash from his bandana. As they hit the road, the puppy's head poked from the saddlebag, ears flapping in the wind. The highway stretched endless, but for the first time in years, Vince felt the pull of purpose. Little did he know, Bolt's origins traced back to a forgotten corner of the county, where disposal meant more than lost pets, where shadows hid hurts that demanded a reckoning. The tough biker and his unlikely companion were rolling toward it, 1 mile at a time, bound by a promise neither had spoken yet. The highway hummed beneath the Harley's tires, a relentless pulse that synced with the steady thrum of Vince's heartbeat. Bolt's small head bobbed from the saddlebag, his ears catching the rush of wind like sails on an open sea. The sun climbed higher, casting long shadows over cornfields that whispered secrets in the breeze, their golden stalks bending as if in quiet applause for the unlikely duo. Vince's grip on the handlebars tightened, the leather of his gloves creaking softly, a sound lost to the engine's growl. He hadn't planned on company, hell, he hadn't planned on stopping at all, but the puppy's warmth against his side felt like an anchor, grounding him in a way the endless miles never had. Miles blurred into hours, the landscape shifting from flat expanses to rolling hills, dotted with weathered barns and faded billboards advertising forgotten diners. Vince's mind wandered to the Viper's last gathering, a bonfire-lit night under a harvest moon where brothers swapped stories of roads taken and regrets buried. He'd kept to the edges then, nursing a beer and the ache of old wounds. But Tommy's face always surfaced in the flames, grinning, unbreakable, until the desert claimed him. "Watch the home front, Boulder," Tommy had said in a foxhole, voice steady amid the whine of distant mortars. "Family's what you fight for, not the flag." Vince had nodded, the promise sealing like solder on his soul. But Homefront blurred after discharge. The Vipers became his kin, yet even they couldn't fill the hollows. A sign for Willow Creek loomed ahead, population 2347, the kind of sleepy town where secrets festered under picket fences and Sunday sermons. Vince's phone buzzed in his pocket, insistent against the vibration of the bike. He pulled into a gravel lot beside a gas station, the pump's ding echoing like a starting pistol. Bolt yipped, scrambling out to sniff the cracked concrete, his tail a frantic blur. As Vince filled the tank, the scent of gasoline mingling with wild honeysuckle from nearby woods, he checked the message. It was from Jax, the Viper's road captain. a grizzled vet with tattoos mapping every scar. Saw the vid, brother. Puppy's got you soft. Club's buzzing, ride safe. Something's off in Willow. Words out about strays turning up? Not right. Vince's jaw set, the scar along it pulling tight. He pocketed the phone and knelt to Bolt, ruffling the pup's fur, now cleaner from a quick rinse at the creek that morning. "What did they do to you, huh?" he murmured, voice low as the rustle of leaves overhead. Bolt leaned in, licking his knuckles with a trust that pierced deeper than any blade. The gas station attendant, a wiry man with sun-spotted hands, watched from the counter through smudged glass. "Heard about your highway stunt," the man called, stepping out with a nod. "Brave move. Town's been seeing more like him lately. Pups dumped on the outskirts. Folks whisper it's that old mill up the ridge, closed years back but shadows linger." The words hung in the air like exhaust fumes, thick and acrid. Vince straightened, his broad frame casting a shadow over the attendant. "Shadows," he echoed, the gravel in his tone matching the lot beneath his boots. The man shrugged, eyes darting to the road. "Yeah, used to be a place for unwanted things, animals mostly, but rumors say more. Cruelty's got a way of spreading, like oil on water." Bolt pressed against Vince's leg, a soft whine escaping as if sensing the undercurrent. Vince's gut twisted, echoes of war zones where disposal meant lives discarded without a trace, promises broken in the dust. He thanked the man with a curt nod and mounted up, Bolt settling back into the bag with a contented sigh. The road to Willow Creek wound tighter now, flanked by dense pines that filtered sunlight into dappled patterns on the asphalt. Vince's thoughts churned. The viral clip had painted him a hero, but heroes carried weight. His phone lit up again. More messages from the Vipers, shares from strangers calling him a legend. One stood out from an anonymous account. "That pup's from the mill. Saved one, others wait." The engine roared to life, drowning doubt as they crested a hill revealing the town below, a cluster of clapboard houses hugging a lazy river, the old mill's silhouette jagged against the horizon like broken teeth. Pulling into the heart of Willow Creek, Vince eased the Harley to a stop outside a nondescript vet clinic, its sign weathered but welcoming. Creekside Animal Care. The air carried the faint tang of river mud and blooming jasmine, a deceptive calm. Inside, the receptionist, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes shadowed by fatigue, looked up from her desk. "Bolt, you said? We've been flooded with calls about strays. Yours made the news. Folks are calling him the highway hero's sidekick." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes as she examined the puppy on a steel table, her gloved hands gentle yet probing. "Found him on I-95. Vince said, arms crossed, leaning against the doorframe. The room smelled of antiseptic and hay, a stark contrast to the leather and oil of his world. Rope collar, skittish. The vet nodded, her expression darkening. "Classic signs from the mill. It's not just pets, people use it to offload burdens. We've pulled litters from there, half-starved, bearing marks of neglect. Last week a whole batch vanished before we could intervene. Sheriff's hands are tied, budget cuts, they say. But it's deeper. Corruption's rooting in this town, like weeds in cracked soil." Vince's fists clenched at his sides, the familiar fire of injustice flaring. Tommy's promise echoed, "Look out for the left behind." This wasn't desert warfare, but the battle lines felt the same. Innocents caught in the crossfire of indifference. "Who's running it?" he asked, voice a low rumble. The vet hesitated, glancing at the window where afternoon light slanted gold across the floor. "Whispers point to Harlan Tate, local bigwig. Owns half the land. Pulls strings at the courthouse. Says it's pest control, but we've seen the aftermath. Bolt's lucky you came along. But poke in that hornet's nest. It changes things." As they left the clinic, Bolt tucked securely in Vince's vest, the pup's eyes bright with unspoken gratitude. The street bustled quietly, kids on bikes, an old-timer sweeping his porch. but tension simmered beneath. Like heat rising from the pavement, Vince straddled his bike, the metal warm under his palms, and glanced at the mill's distant bulk. The Viper's code burned in his veins. Stand for the voiceless. What began as a roadside mercy was uncoiling into a stand against shadows that mirrored his own past. He revved the engine, the sound a declaration, and Bolt's tail thumped in rhythm. The road called, but now it led inward, toward reckonings long overdue. And now I invite you to leave in the comments where you're watching from and the exact hour you heard this story. We wish to know how far these northern confessions travel and at what moments they reach you. The sun dipped lower over Willow Creek, painting the river in strokes of molten gold as Vince guided the Harley along the town's winding outskirts. Bolt's nose poked from the saddlebag, sniffing the air thick with the scent of damp earth and distant rain. The mill loomed closer now, its rusted silos piercing the sky like forgotten sentinels, vines choking the chain-link fence that sagged under years of neglect. Vince's boots crunched on gravel as he killed the engine, the sudden quiet amplifying the creak of swaying metal and the faint rustle of leaves in the underbrush. He scanned the perimeter, his eyes, sharp from nights patrolling hostile borders, picking out tire tracks in the mud, fresh enough to suggest recent visitors. Bolt whimpered softly, pressing closer, as if the place's aura seeped into his bones. Vince scratched behind the pup's ears, a gesture that steadied them both. "Stay put, partner," he murmured, securing the saddlebag before slipping through a gap in the fence. The air inside grew heavier, laced with the musty rot of abandonment and something sharper, disinfectant maybe, or the metallic tang of fear long dissipated. Broken windows gaped like empty sockets, shards glinting in the fading light. He moved like a shadow, boots silent on the cracked concrete. Memories of stealth runs in moonless deserts guiding his steps. This wasn't a war zone, but the stakes felt personal, an echo of promises made in foxholes. Protect the vulnerable no matter the cost. Deeper in, past toppled crates and scattered debris, Vince found the first signs. Piles of frayed ropes like the one on Bolt's neck, coiled in the dust like discarded nooses. A makeshift pen in the corner, splintered wood stained dark, held echoes of confinement. Shallow bowls crusted with old water, paw prints etched into the floor. His gut churned, the scene stirring ghosts of squad mates left in the sand, lives snuffed out by indifference. He knelt, gloved fingers tracing a scrape on the wall, deep and frantic, as if something small had clawed for freedom. "Bastards!" he growled under his breath, the word a vow carving into the silence. A distant snap, twig underfoot, jerked him upright. Vince melted into the gloom behind a rusted beam, heart steady as he peered out. Two figures emerged from the tree line, silhouettes against the twilight, a stocky man in overalls, shotgun slung casual over his shoulder, and a lanky kid, barely out of his teens, hauling a burlap sack that squirmed faintly. "Hurry it up, boy," the older one barked, voice rough as gravel. "Tate don't like delays. Get him in the pit before dark." The kid nodded, sweat beading on his brow, but his eyes darted nervous, like a colt sensing the whip. Vince's blood ran hot, fists clenching at the casual cruelty. He stepped out slow, boots deliberate on the concrete, his frame filling the doorway like a storm front. "Evening," he said, tone even but laced with steel. The men froze, the sack thumping to the ground with muffled yips. The older one's hand twitched toward the shotgun, but Vince's stare pinned him, unblinking, the kind that had stared down insurgents without flinching. "Heard this place takes care of strays. Looks more like a graveyard to me." The man recovered, spitting to the side. "Private property. You lost, stranger?" His eyes narrowed, recognizing the leather cut, the viper patch gleaming faintly. "Biker trash stir in trouble? Tate owns this land. Best ride on 'fore you regret it." The kid shifted, sack forgotten, his face paling as Bolt's distant bark echoed from the bike outside. Vince took a step closer, the air between them crackling like live wire. "Name's Knox, and I don't spook easy. What's in the sack? More burdens for the boss man." Tension coiled tight, the older man's knuckles whitening on the gunstock. But the kid cracked first, voice trembling. "It's just dogs, mister. Pups no one wants. Harlan says it's mercy. Quick end, no sufferin'. But it ain't right. My pa works for him, makes me come. Please don't—" The older one backhanded him silent, a sharp crack that echoed off the walls. Vince surged forward, grabbing the shotgun barrel before it rose, twisting it free with a force born of restrained fury. "Touch the boy again, and you'll need more than Tate's say-so to walk away." The man lunged, but Vince sidestepped, driving an elbow into his gut that folded him like wet paper. He hit the ground wheezing, the fight draining out as Vince loomed over him. "Tell your boss the shadows end here. Vipers don't forget." The kid scrambled back, eyes wide with a mix of terror and relief, as Vince unzipped the sack. 3 tiny forms tumbled out, pups like Bolt, shivering but alive, their eyes pleading in the dim light. He gathered them gently, the warmth of their fur a stark contrast to the cold metal of the gun now dangling from his hand. Outside, Bolt greeted them with frantic licks, the newcomers huddling close as if recognizing kin. Vince loaded them into a spare pannier, his mind racing. The kid lingered at the fence, whispering, "Tate's got the sheriff in his pocket. Runs a ring. Animals, junk, whatever turns a profit. But it's the kids, lost ones, runaways. Says he's helping, but they vanished too." The words landed like shrapnel, ripping open old wounds. Tommy's little sister, adrift after the funeral. A promise Vince had let slip in his own drift. No more. As night cloaked the mill, Vince fired up the Harley, the engine's roar a defiant anthem cutting the dark. He rode back toward town, pups safe in tow, the weight of their trust heavier than any saddlebag. His phone vibrated. Jack's again. "Heard from a contact. Willow's rotten core is Tate. Vipers inbound if you call it." Vince thumbed a reply. "Call it." The road unfurled under stars emerging like distant allies, Willow Creek's lights twinkling deceptive below. What started with a highway standstill was forging into a brotherhood stand, pulling Vince from solitude into the fire of redemption. Bolt's head rested on his thigh, a silent pact sealed in the wind-whipped night. But Harlan Tate's shadow stretched long, and dawn would bring the first test of loyalties old and new. Vince felt the pull, unbreakable as the code that bound him, honor for the forsaken, one ride at a time. The moon hung low over Willow Creek like a watchful eye, silvering the river's surface as Vince's Harley cut through the night, its headlights slicing shadows from the road. Bolt and the rescued pups huddled in the panniers, their soft breaths a counterpoint to the engine's steady growl. The air cooled, carrying the crisp bite of pine and the faint, acrid whisper of the mill's decay fading behind. Vince's mind raced faster than the miles. Harlan Tate's name burned like a brand, stirring the embers of old battles where power crushed the small without remorse. The kid's words echoed. Lost ones. Runaways vanishing into the ether. It mirrored the voids in his own life, promises to Tommy's kin left unfulfilled in the haze of his wandering years. He pulled into a dimly lit motel on the town's edge, the creek rest sign buzzing faintly, its neon halo flickering against peeling paint. The clerk, a gaunt woman with eyes like chipped flint, handed over a key without questions, her gaze lingering on the saddlebag's cargo. "Heard the rumble," she said, voice threaded with caution. "Strays ain't the only things wandering these nights. Tate's boys keep watch." Vince nodded, jaw set, and carried the pups inside, Bolt trailing like a loyal shadow. The room smelled of stale smoke and linens, long overdue for washing, but it was shelter, a brief pause before the storm. As dawn crept in, painting the curtains with pale light, Vince's phone shattered the quiet. Jax's voice crackled through, rough from cross-country miles. "Vipers are mobilizing, brother. 20 strong, riding from the tri-state. ETA midday. You hold the line?" Vince stood at the window, overlooking the sleepy street where early risers stirred. A baker firing up ovens, the scent of fresh dough wafting on the breeze. "Holding," he replied, Bolt at his feet, pawing gently at his boot. "Tate's got reach. Kids involved. Can't let it slide." Jax paused, the weight of brotherhood bridging the line. "Tommy'd be proud. We're family in this. Ride true." The morning unfolded slow, tension coiling like smoke from a hidden fire. Vince walked Bolt along the riverbank, the pups tumbling in the grass, their playful yips chasing away the night's chill. Willow Creek stirred awake, but undercurrents rippled, whispers from porch sitters, eyes tracking the outsider on the big bike. At the local market, a cluster of townsfolk huddled over coffee, their murmurs halting as he approached for supplies. An older woman, lines etched deep from years of quiet endurance, slipped him a note with his change. "Tate's warehouse by the tracks after dark. Helps the young ones, or hurts 'em. Be careful." Her hand trembled, a silent plea born of too many unspoken fears. Back at the motel, Vince pored over a crumpled map, the paper crinkling under his fingers like dry leaves. The warehouse squatted on the industrial fringe, a hulking shadow against the tracks where freight cars rusted in perpetual wait. Memories surfaced unbidden, desert outposts hiding atrocities. The moral rot that festered when authority turned blind. He'd sworn to Tommy, in the dim glow of a bunker, to shield the innocent from such darkness. The Vipers embodied that oath, a chosen kin forged in chrome and code, not blood. Now, Bolt's trusting gaze met his, the pup's scar catching the light like a badge of survival. It was time to honor the vow, not just for strays, but for the human echoes lost in the margins. By noon, the horizon thrummed with arrival, engines swelled like thunder. A convoy of Harleys rolling into the motel lot, leather vests emblazoned with viper coils, faces weathered by roads and regrets. Jax dismounted first, clapping Vince's shoulder with a grip like iron. "Brought the core, Boulder. Riggs, Mac, the twins, we're your wall." The brothers gathered, a circle of nods and low words, sharing smokes and stories of rides past. One, a burly vet named Reyes, knelt to the pups, his scarred hands gentle. "Reminds me of the mutts back in the sandbox. Kept us sane." Laughter rippled, brief but binding as they planned. Scout the warehouse, expose the shadows without a blaze of guns. Truth as the weapon, loyalty the shield. As afternoon waned, the group split, Vince and Jax on point, scouting the tracks under a sky bruising to twilight. The warehouse loomed, its corrugated walls groaning in the wind, faint lights flickering within like trapped fireflies. They crouched behind a derelict rail car, the metallic tang of rust sharp on the tongue. Voices drifted, gruff commands, a child's muffled sob that twisted Vince's gut like a knife. "Tate's operation," Jax whispered, binoculars steady. "Cages, not just animals. Runaways, yeah. Fed lies about shelter, then gone." Vince's breath steadied, the fire in his veins channeling into resolve. No graphic ends, just the quiet horror of disposal, lives erased for profit's sake. They waited. The wait, a test of patience honed in ambushes long ago. Dusk deepened, stars pricking the velvet sky when tires crunched, 2 trucks rumbling up, headlights sweeping like searchlights. Men unloaded crates, shapes stirring inside, and a smaller figure, a boy no more than 12. Wide-eyed and chained, stumbled out, his plea lost in the din. Vince signaled, the Vipers fanning silent from the shadows, engines cold to avoid alarm. Jax's hand on his arm. "We do this clean, for the code." Vince nodded, stepping forward into the open, his voice booming across the yard. "Tate's game ends tonight. Let the kid go." Chaos erupted, soft at first, guards whirling. shouts slicing the air. But the vipers moved as one, a tide of presence overwhelming without fists flying. One brother cut the boys' bonds with a multi-tool, another herded the crates open, revealing more young faces blinking into freedom. The foreman, a weasel-faced type, snarled threats of law, but Jax's glare silenced him. "Call your sheriff, puppet. We'll have lights on this by morning, cameras rolling, truth out." Vince knelt to the boy, Bolt's warmth a bridge as the pup nuzzled close. "You're safe now? Family's coming." The child's nod, tear-streaked but steady, sealed the moment. A spark of redemption in the gloom. As sirens wailed distant, the convoy reformed, the rescued bundled secure. Tate's empire cracked, not by force, but by the unyielding stand of men who kept promises alive. Vince mounted up, the boy riding pillion with Jax, pups safe in the lead. The road out of Willow stretched dark and promising, engines uniting in a chorus of defiance. Shadows retreated, but the ride forged ahead. Honor reclaimed one soul at a time. If this tale of quiet courage stirred something in you, hit that like button below. Your support keeps these stories roaring on the open road. The first light of dawn pierced the horizon like a blade, gilding the edges of Willow Creek as the Viper's convoy thundered out of town. Vince led the pack, his Harley cutting a steady path through the mist-shrouded backroads. The rescued boy, named Eli, he'd learned in hushed words during the ride, clinging to Jax's waist behind him. Bolt's head bobbed from the saddlebag, his scar a faint gleam in the rising sun, while the pups yipped softly in their secure hold, their warmth a reminder of fragile victories. The air whipped cool and clean, carrying the scent of dew-soaked pines and the faint lingering bite of exhaust from the night's confrontation. Engines harmonized in a low rumble, a brotherhood's heartbeat echoing across the empty miles, leaving Tate's crumbling empire in the dust. Sirens had faded into echoes, the sheriff's lights swallowed by the dark as the group vanished into the pre-dawn haze. No shots fired, no blood spilled, just the weight of exposure, phones capturing the warehouse's grim truths. Crates pried open, young faces emerging into the night. The foreman's snarls turning to stammers under flashlight beams. Vince's mind replayed it in stark frames, the boy's chains clinking free, the soft gasps of relief, Jax's steady voice promising sanctuary. It wasn't glory, it was duty. The kind Tommy had drilled into him under starless skies, where survival meant standing for those too small to fight back. The Vipers had answered the call without question, their loyalty a chain stronger than any Harlan Tate could forge. They veered off the main drag toward a safe house on the county line, an old farmhouse tucked among rolling meadows, its weathered siding blending into the landscape like a forgotten memory. The owner, a Viper affiliate named Lena, a no-nonsense widow with a mechanic's hands and a gaze that missed nothing, waved them in from the porch, her shotgun propped casual against the rail. Heard the rumble comin', got coffee brewing and rooms cleared. The bikes filed into the barn, engines sighing to silence as the group dismounted, boots scuffing the hay-strewn floor. Eli slid off Jax's ride, legs shaky, but eyes alight with a spark Vince recognized, the first taste of trust after betrayal. Inside, the kitchen glowed warm with lantern light, the aroma of strong brew mingling with sizzling bacon on the stove. The pups tumbled out, exploring with tentative sniffs, Bolt herding them like a tiny guardian. Vince leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, watching as Reyes and the twins settled the runaways, 5 kids in all, ages blurring from Eli's 12 to a wide-eyed girl of maybe 9, around a scarred oak table. Blankets draped their shoulders, steam rising from mugs of hot chocolate, Lena pressed into their hands. "You're off the grid now," she said, voice firm but kind, like gravel smoothed by river water. "Tate's reach stops at these walls. We'll get you to real help, folks who ask questions without strings." Eli met Vince's eyes across the room, his thin frame still shadowed by the night's ordeal. "They said it was a job, work for food, But it was. Nothing, just waiting to disappear. The words hung heavy, stirring the air like smoke from a dying fire. Vince nodded, pulling up a chair, the wood creaking under his weight. Bolt hopped into his lap, a paw on his knee, as if anchoring the moment. "Disappearing's over," Vince rumbled, his scarred hand resting near the boy's. "Promised a brother once to watch for the left behind. Vipers keep that word. You got family now, not by blood, but by choice." The other kids leaned in, murmurs rippling, their guarded faces softening under the promise of something solid. Jax joined them, sliding a plate of food Eli's way, his own tattoos, a map of battles etched in ink, catching the light. Tate's web's unraveling. That vid from the warehouse, already hitting networks. Anonymous tips to the feds too, no traces back to us. He glanced at Vince, a silent nod passing between them, forged in rides through storms and losses unspoken. The club wasn't vigilantes. They were keepers of oaths, men who'd traded uniforms for leathers, but never the code. Tommy's ghost lingered in the steam, his grin a faint echo. Family first, always. As morning deepened, the farmhouse buzzed with quiet purpose. Lena radioed contacts, shelters upstate vetted by Viper ties, while Reyes tinkered with the bikes outside, the clang of tools a rhythmic underscore to the unfolding day. Vince stepped onto the porch, the meadow stretching golden under the sun, wildflowers nodding in the breeze. Bolt trotted at his heels, chasing butterflies with joyful bounds, the other pups trailing in a fluffy procession. The peace felt earned, a brief exhale after the tension, but Vince's instincts prickled. The horizon held Harlan Tate's silhouette yet, a man who wouldn't fade quietly. A low rumble announced another arrival, a single rider, dust-caked and urgent, pulling up with a skid. It was the kid from the mill, face gaunt under a borrowed helmet, eyes wide with the weight of defection. "Pa sent me," he gasped, dismounting. "Tate's ragin'. Got wind of the raid, sheriff's stallin', but he's callin' in favors. Warehouse is crawlin' with his crew, coverin' tracks. Says he'll burn it all before dawn breaks full." Vince's jaw tightened, the scar pulling like a reminder of battles half won. The boy hesitated, glancing at Eli through the screen door. "I couldn't. After last night. Told Pa it's wrong. For the kids, the animals, everything." The group gathered, maps unrolled on the hood of Lena's truck, the sun climbing to midday heat. Tate's final stand loomed, a desperate bid to erase evidence, lives and ledgers alike. Vince traced the route back to town, the lines blurring with resolve. "We ride at dusk, expose him clean. One last push for the truth." Jax clapped his shoulder, the Vipers murmuring assent, their circle unbreakable. Eli watched from the steps, Bolt at his side, a small hand buried in fur. "You'll stop him?" the boy asked, voice steady now. Vince knelt, meeting that gaze. "For you, for all of them, promise kept." The afternoon waned in preparation, shadows lengthening across the fields like fingers reaching for reckoning. Vince oiled his chain drive, the metallic scent grounding him, while the kids shared stories in fits and starts, tales of homes fractured, hopes dashed, now mending in the warmth of chosen kin. Bolt's playful nips drew laughs, a bridge from fear to fragile joy. As the sun dipped, painting the sky in fiery hues, the convoy reformed, engines idling like patient beasts. Tate's darkness clung, but the road ahead burned brighter, redemption's call, pulling Vince deeper into the light of honor reclaimed, one defiant mile at a time. The sun bled into the horizon, a crimson smear across the sky as the Viper's convoy crested the final ridge overlooking Willow Creek. Vince throttled back on his Harley, the engine's growl softening to a watchful purr, while Bolt's ears perked from the saddlebag, sensing the shift in the air. The farmhouse's warmth lingered in his bones, the kids' tentative smiles, Eli's quiet nod of trust, but the pull of unfinished business tugged like an old chain. Tate's warehouse squatted by the tracks in the valley below, its silhouette sharpening against the twilight. floodlights already flickering to life like wary eyes. The scent of cooling earth mingled with the oily tang of idling trucks, a prelude to the storm brewing in the shadows. Jax rode flank, his bike humming in sync, the rescued pups secure in reinforced carriers, lashed to the group. The brothers fanned out in a loose formation, 20 strong, leathers whispering against the wind, faces set with the grim resolve of men who'd stared down worse than a cornered tyrant. Lena had stayed back with the kids, her radio crackling assurances. Hold the line. Helps inbound from the state line. Real badges this time, no strings. But Vince knew the truth. Justice moved slow in places like this, corrupted by favors and folded palms. This ride was for the code, the silent pact that bound them, echoing Tommy's foxhole vow to shield the overlooked from the abyss. They eased into position along the tree line, engines cut to ghosts in the dusk, boots sinking into the soft loam as they dismounted. The air hummed with tension, crickets falling silent under the weight of their approach. Vince scanned the yard through binoculars, the lenses cool against his scarred palm. Tate's crew milled like ants, torches hissing as they doused crates with accelerant, the sharp reek drifting on the breeze. Guards patrolled the perimeter, shadows lengthening with each step, while inside the open bays, faint movements suggested frantic cover-ups, ledgers shredded, remnants of confinement hastily erased. No signs of the vulnerable now. They'd been cleared out in the raid, but the echo of their plight hung heavy, a moral debt demanding payment. Flank left, Vince murmured to Jax, voice low as the rustle of leaves. The plan was etched simple: infiltrate quiet, document the blaze of corruption before it turned literal fire. Reyes and the twins peeled off, vanishing into the underbrush like wraiths, their multi-tools and dash cams at the ready. Vince and Jax crept forward, hearts steady from years of patrols, where one wrong step meant oblivion. The ground sloped down, gravel crunching faintly underfoot, the river's murmur a distant ally, masking their advance. Bolt stayed tethered to the bike with the others, his whine a soft protest swallowed by the night. Closer now, the warehouse's heat pressed in, not just from the impending inferno, but the fever of desperation. A side door creaked open, spilling yellow light, and out stumbled a figure Vince recognized. The mill's older hand, face bruised from their last encounter, hauling a gas can with shaking arms. Tate himself loomed in the doorway, a paunchy silhouette in a rumpled suit, his voice slicing the air like a whip. "Burn it clean, Earl! No traces, no pups, no brats, no loose ends. Sheriff's buying time, but that biker scum's stirring the pot." The words landed like blows, stirring Vince's blood. The casual dismissal of lives reduced to ends, a mirror to the indifference that had claimed Tommy in the sands. Jack signaled, and they surged, silent as smoke, Vince tackling the guard nearest the door with a forearm across the throat, pressure just enough to still without harm. The man slumped, eyes wide but compliant, as Jax zip-tied his wrists. Inside, chaos unfolded in controlled bursts. Brothers fanning flashlights, capturing the scene on phones. Piles of ropes and chains, glinting accusatory half-burned documents fluttering like trapped birds. Tate whirled, face paling under the stubble, his bluster cracking. "You, the dogman! This is my town, my rules!" He lunged for a radio, but Vince stepped forward, broad frame blocking the light, his presence a wall of unyielding calm. "Rules end when they hurt the small," Vince said, voice gravel steady, the scar on his jaw catching the gleam. "We got eyes on this. Videos, witnesses, the whole rotten core. Step aside, Tate. Let the truth ride out." The man snarled, gesturing wildly to his crew, but the Vipers held the ground, a circle of leathers and loyalty that brooked no breach. One brother, Mac, knelt by a smouldering crate, pulling free a singed collar like bolts, evidence of the mill's ties, a thread weaving animal cruelty to human shadows. Tate's eyes darted, sweat beading, as distant sirens wailed, drawn by anonymous calls from the safe house. In the standoff's heart, a flicker of fracture. Earl dropped his can, the liquid sloshing dark across the concrete. His gaze meeting Vince's with a haunted plea. He made us, said it was business, but the kids, they cried for home. The confession hung, a crack in the facade, as Tate backed away, bluster fading to blather. You can't prove nothing, it's all gone. But the phones rolled on, the light of recordings stripping his empire bare. Vince felt the weight lift, not in triumph, but in the quiet honor of standing firm, the promise to Tommy alive in this moment, extended to strays and souls alike. Sirens swelled, blue lights piercing the night like judgment's dawn. The Vipers withdrew orderly, melting back to their bikes as authorities swarmed. Tate's protests drowned in the clamor. Vince mounted up last, Bolt leaping into his arms with a joyful nuzzle, the pup's warmth chasing the chill of confrontation. The convoy roared to life, engines uniting in a defiant symphony, carrying them from the fray. Willow Creek receded, its shadows pierced, but the road stretched on, redemption's path winding through loyalty's unbreaking chain. Eli's face flashed in Vince's mind, safe now, a testament to choices that echoed louder than any roar. One more dawn waited, to seal the vow in full. The first rays of dawn crested the eastern hills, spilling liquid gold across the dew-kissed meadows as the Viper's convoy eased back toward the farmhouse. Vince's Harley led the way, its chrome catching the light like polished armor, the engine's idle purr a soothing counterpoint to the night's fading echoes. Bolt nestled against his side, the pup's fur warm and soft, his lightning scar a subtle reminder of journeys begun in chaos. The air hung crisp, laced with the earthy tang of turned soil and the faint, lingering smoke from the warehouse's thwarted blaze. A scent that spoke of shadows scorched but not forgotten. Eli rode with Jax now, the boy's small frame steadier on the pillion, his hand gripping the leather vest like a lifeline reclaimed. The farmhouse emerged from the mist like a sentinel, its windows glowing with the soft warmth of hearth fires kindled early. Lena stood on the porch, arms crossed over her flannel shirt, her eyes scanning the horizon until the rumble announced their return. The bikes filed into the yard, dust swirling in lazy eddies, engines sighing to silence as the brothers dismounted. Boots thudded on packed earth, the group converging in a loose circle, faces etched with fatigue but lifted by the quiet victory of oaths upheld. Reyes clapped Mac on the back, a low chuckle rumbling between them, while the twins unloaded the pups, their yips piercing the morning hush like sparks of new life. Inside, the kitchen enveloped them in aromas of fresh coffee and rising bread, steam curling from the stove like whispered secrets. The rescued kids clustered around the table, blankets draped like capes of safety, their eyes widening at the returning heroes. Eli slipped from Jax's shadow, approaching Vince with tentative steps, the floorboards creaking under his sneakers. "Is it over?" he asked, voice threaded with the fragility of hope, his fingers twisting the hem of his borrowed shirt. Vince knelt to his level, the scent of leather and road dust mingling with the boy's faint trace of fear sweat. Bolt nudged between them, tail thumping a rhythmic affirmation. "Over for Tate," Vince replied, his gravel tone softened at the edges. "Lights are on him now, feds rolling in, truths spilling out. You and the others, you're headed to places that build, not break." Lena poured mugs all around, her hands steady as she passed one to Vince, the ceramic warm against his calluses. "Radio says the warehouse is taped off. Tate's in cuffs, sputtering about rights he never gave others. Your videos sealed it. No denials left." The words settled like embers cooling, the room filling with nods and murmurs, the Viper's bond, a tangible force weaving through the space. Jax leaned against the counter, his tattooed arms folding as he eyed the group. We rode for the code, brothers. Tommy's code. Watch the flanks. Guard the small. Willow's rot ends because we didn't look away. Vince felt the echo deep, Tommy's face flickering in his mind's eye. That foxhole grin, the promise etched in the dim light of distant explosions. Years of solo miles had dulled it, but this, saving strays and souls alike, had burnished it anew. The morning unfolded in gentle rhythms, sunlight slanting through lace curtains to dance across scarred tabletops. The pups romped in the yard, Bolt leading the charge with joyful bounds, his barks chasing butterflies through the grass. Vince watched from the porch steps, coffee steaming in his grip, the wooden rail rough under his palm. Eli joined him, the boy settling close, a newfound ease in his posture. "Bolt picked you," Eli said, watching the dog roll in the clover. "Like he knew you'd stop." Vince's scar tugged with a half-smile, the first real one in dawn's light. "Maybe. Or maybe I was the one who needed picking. Lost my way after the war. Promises piling up like unpaid debts. This little guy's reminding me, family's what you fight to keep, not what slips away." Jax approached, settling on the step below, his presence a steady anchor. Clubs talk in extension, safe runs for the overlooked, from strays to street kids, vipers as the wall they lean on. The idea bloomed in Vince's chest, warm as the rising sun, transforming solitude into purpose. The brothers gathered outside, tools clinking as they tuned the bikes for the road ahead, laughter punctuating the work like notes in a hard-won song. Lena herded the kids inside for breakfast, her voice a gentle command amid the clatter of plates. One by one, contacts arrived, counselors from upstate, their vans unmarked and welcoming, ready to ferry the young ones to horizons free of chains. As midday approached, farewells unfolded soft and sure. Eli hugged Vince fierce, the boy's arms thin but strong, whispering, "Thanks for the family." The van pulled away, dust trailing like a benediction, leaving the air clearer, lighter. Vince straddled his Harley, Bolt leaping into the saddlebag with practiced grace. The pup's eyes bright with the promise of endless blacktop. The vipers formed up, engines igniting in a chorus that vibrated through bone and soul. 20 riders strong, bound not by blood, but by the unyielding thread of loyalty. Jax revved beside him, a nod sealing the pact. Onward, together. The convoy rolled out, the farmhouse shrinking in the mirrors. Willow Creek a chapter closed in the rear view. The road unfurled under tires, asphalt warm and forgiving, flanked by fields swaying in the breeze. Vince felt the weight lift, redemption settling like a well-worn jacket. Tommy's vow fulfilled, not in glory, but in the quiet honor of standing tall. Bolt's head rested against his thigh, wind ruffling fur, a companion forged in mercy's fire. Shadows of the past receded, chased by the dawn of chosen kin, 1 mile marking the legacy of promises kept. Thank you for riding along on this journey of grit and grace. If tales of unbreakable bonds and quiet heroism speak to your soul, please subscribe for more stories that honor the road less traveled.